Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member Sullivan. And I'll follow up with you, General Mingus, on the future soldier, because I'm intrigued with that. You say about 18,000 folks have come through. I spent some time down at Fort Eustis talking about this and was really impressed maybe 18 months ago. 90% are able to get to the standard by the end of that course. It hasn't been in place that long, but what are you finding? I hope we're going to longitudinally follow this group to see what we learn about retention. Did it not only enable them to meet the standard, but maybe prepare them to, hey, I really want to stick with this? And probably a little bit too early to draw conclusions about that. Am I right about that?
You are, sir, and we are absolutely going to track everyone from a longitudinal perspective, just to make sure we haven't created another problem. So far, the data suggests that it's not. First term is on par with other first-termers, and so as a result, we're considering the expansion of, instead of just doing it in South Carolina, maybe expanding it to other basic training locations.
Well, it'll be interesting over time to compare folks who went through Future Soldier with those who didn't, and see if there's a different, kind of stickiness to their desire to stay. So I'll look forward to following that. And I know that many of the other services are watching carefully what you're doing, and Navy and others are implementing too. So thanks for that. Here's an issue that I've raised with a number of you when we've talked in the past. I'm really worried about the inadequacy of the labor supply in our industrial base. So, the 45-day shipbuilding analysis that was done, Admiral Kilby, you and I talked about this work done by the SecNav directed to look at why are we so late on the Columbia, why are we so late on Ford class, Virginia class, and there's a number of reasons, but the workforce is a key one. And even when it's workforce plus supply chain, often the challenge on the supply chain is the workforce. So we see this really spread throughout, and I'm really nervous about it. Here's what I'm finding, though, that troubles me. Every year, military recruiters turn away thousands of young Americans who are disqualified from military service for one reason or another. And I've had interactions with some in the last 90 days. I wanted to serve my country, and I passed through all the vetting and security check, but I had asthma in my background, or I had something else in my background that meant I was a no-go for entering the service. And I said, okay, when they tell you no, how'd you feel? I was really disappointed. And then did they say, hey, look, if you want to serve your country, you can still serve your country just because you can't come into the uniformed service. There's DOD civilian positions. There's an industrial base that are essentially in the foxhole with our active service in terms of the critical nature. And my interaction with people who've recently been turned away is no, they were given nothing other than I'm sorry, we can't let you in. I would hope that our services would direct patriotic people who want to serve this nation, who for one reason or another may not meet a qualification. I would hope that they might be directed to other parts of our defense ecosystem, because we need an awful lot of people. We need the tens of thousands who exit military service every year, who are going to go out into the big wide world and do anything. There's all kinds of opportunities for them to continue serving. And I think many of them know that, but an awful lot of people, based on my son's experience when he was the really green first lieutenant and had his first Marine platoon, and his sergeant came and said, I'm retiring in 60 days. What should I do to find a job? I mean, there ought to be ways to direct people into filling up these positions serving our country in the industrial base or the DOD civilian side. And I don't know that we're doing that. And I just would encourage you to see if we might be able to do that better. There's not a question there, but it's an encouragement. I do have a question about Counter-UAS in my last minute. We've been having some testimony and some hearings, some open, some classified, about UAS challenges, and obviously they're a threat in combat, but increasingly they're also a threat to our installations, both at home and overseas. Addressing this threat requires an awful lot of coordination. If it's at home, it's usually between a city or county and a state and a local law enforcement agency, and maybe the DHS or the FBI, as well as a base commander and others. And I worry a little bit that we're maybe not really coordinating as we are thinking about how to deal with the UAS threat around our own bases, both domestically and those that are overseas, where you have a foreign government also to deal with in terms of what you can do. How are you satisfied with the degree of coordination that we are seeing in trying to get after and solve this problem? Any of you want to?
Senator, I'll answer that. But in 17 seconds, I can give you about 15 back. because the answer is no, not satisfied. And the reason we're not satisfied is because although the services coordinate effectively together and leverage each other's capabilities, every single locale is its own story. And so there is no national approach to this counter small UAS issue. It is local issue by local issue.
I don't want to go over my time, but let me ask one other question really quick. If there was is there somebody in the Pentagon who I could like grab by the shoulders and say, hey, you're responsible for this, the coordination part of it? Admittedly, it's complicated with all the laterals, but you're responsible for this. Tell me what we're doing to really develop strategies. Who would I go to? Who is that person?
I could be one of them.
Okay.
Dr. Bill LaPlante, A&S, Undersecretary for Defense for A&S. He and I co-chair the session that kind of leads this on behalf of the Secretary of Defense.
Okay.
He stood up a Tiger team. That Tiger team's still in place. Bill LaPlante and I, and there's a couple other forums that do this, and all the services are part of that forum that Bill and I co-chair. But we would love to come back over and give you a deep dive on that, sir.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.